Call the meeting to order. Brief moment of silence. All right, thank you. Steve, into the legislative update?
The key thing on the legislative update, of course, is the budget. I don't know if you may have heard rumors yesterday. There were rumors going around up until 4 o'clock in the morning that a budget deal had been reached. Had a conference call, though, this morning with OFM and the governor's office, and they say that's not the case. There is no final deal yet. We'll be notified as soon as there is a final deal. And at this point in time, the issues that I've talked about with you guys in the past, I don't expect to change, but I don't know anything more than I did a month ago, in the sense that contribution rates I don't expect to be changed in the budget. The requirement that local governments collect the state share of member contributions when employees are serving at special events is likely to be in there. And the scheduled payment to the benefit improvement account is not likely to be in there. There were a couple of big items then that were proposed or talked about being proposed in different budgets earlier. One would have shifted the state share of Left 2 contributions to local governments. My understanding is that is not to be expected in the budget. Another one was merger, and again, my understanding is that is not expected to be in the budget. But I'd be happy to answer questions on any of those. No word yet on the study requirement about tribal law enforcement officers in Tlaib. The things that they're talking about now are, they're not talking about those kind of things. So we probably won't know about that until the final budget is released. They're going to go all the way up until midnight on Friday night. And I think they're cautiously optimistic that some kind of agreement could be announced today, and then it's just the mechanical grind that'll take place. It usually takes, just to go through the process of passing a budget, takes about 3 days. But there are ways that the legislature can suspend various rules and speed that process up and still give the governor time to review the actual proposals and sign them by midnight on the 30th. Some of the trailer bills that are necessary to implement the budget may come after the 30th, though. So the legislature may be working this weekend, even if they actually get the operating budget passed by the 30th. Let's see. The only other, nothing's new on the bills impacting Left Plan 2 other than on the Public Hospital District EMT bill. Implementation of that begins July 1. DRS has got an implementation plan up and going, and they've already begun some of the preliminary work that they need. They'll be reaching out to all the affected employers as step one to get information about members and their service credit history and their salary history, and then they can start coordinating with individual members about the estimates for purchase of their past service and that piece. The Interrupted Military Service Credit Study, the SCPP had a preliminary hearing or their initial hearing on this topic at their June SCPP meeting earlier this month. And so they're going to be working on the same issue, but they'll be looking at it from the perspective of all the other plans, and you guys will be working on it from the perspective of Left 2, and we'll keep you coordinated on who's doing what throughout the interim. Also, the SCPP is going to include in this, in their study prior military. Our plan now is to have your initial presentation on this topic ready to go for the July meeting, which we expect to be a regular full meeting of, so we'll go over the budget review, the session review, an interim preview, and then we'll have a couple of other topics for you that we already know you'll be working on, such as the study. We'll be looking for you in July to get direction on the rest of the interim, and it's going to be a compressed interim, so we'll have to work hard on trying to identify topics early or screen them out early to make sure that there is time to work on the issues that you want to work on, to cover those thoroughly. Now, with respect to the administrative update, we've continued working with the Department of Retirement Systems on the rule for duty-related disability retirements, and that's been a very productive process. I think it's 95% done, and they'll be wrapping up their piece of it in the next couple of weeks, I think, and then finishing up the internal process and getting that published. It's been a very productive process, and as you'll recall, there was 6 rules that were identified about a year ago that the board wanted to work on with the Department of Retirement Systems. I reached out to the DRS director to see if she'd be willing to continue this project team process and start knocking out those additional rules. And she's going to confer with her team on that. We don't have a final answer for you at this point in time. Outreach activities. The State Council of Firefighters had their annual convention last week. We had a table there with materials and answering questions. And then Tammy will be attending the Stand With Those Who Serve event in July. Those are the only ones that we have on the calendar. There are a couple of other, though, notes. For those of you who may not have heard yet, we've got 2 vacant positions, or 2 positions on the board that are currently filled, where the incumbents have announced that they will not be seeking reappointment. So David Klein has been on the board since July of 2013, and he has announced that he will not seek reappointment. The Association of Cities has submitted a couple of other names to the governor's office. We'll let you know as soon as the governor's office makes a announcement on who the governor will be appointing to fill that vacancy. David was, for me personally, he was a very helpful board member, willing to have frank conversations, provided a bunch of helpful advice to me personally on administrative, managerial type issues. And so I want to thank him for his service and his personal help for me. And then Kelly Fox. Kelly's term expires Friday, and he has announced that he will not seek reappointment. Kelly has been on the board since its inception, and he's been the chair of the board since its inception. So that will definitely result in a lot of change. The State Council of Firefighters has submitted names to fill that vacancy to the governor's office, and again, as soon as we know who's been appointed to that position, we'll let you know. Under your operating rules, when the next meeting begins, usually the current chair continues on until you elect a new chair. One of your assignments this interim will be electing a new chair and vice chair and employer representative. With Kelly being gone, that means Jason Graneman will be the acting chair until until you have nominations and election. Kelly, again, from the beginning, has been an extraordinary chair. It's been, I've enjoyed working for him for 14 years. He was here local, so I got a chance to spend quite a bit of time with him during session and other events. Whenever something came up, he was able to be here to help out. That I will miss working with him a great deal. He was an extraordinary boss for 14 years. That right now concludes the administrative activities. Let's see. The next meeting is July 26th. As I mentioned to you at that earlier, we are expecting that to be a full meeting. So we'll be sending out the agenda and the materials, but we're going to have a session review, an interim preview with the expectation that hopefully you'll be able to give us direction on certain issues that you want included on the interim agenda. We will also at that time have a initial presentation on the interrupted military service issue, and we'll try to identify as many items as we can that we know you'll have to work on to have you as prepared as possible for that July meeting. Again, it's going to be an unusually compressed interim. Are there any questions?
Well, with no questions, no further info.
We'll send out again, just so that you know from prior meetings, the board is not an appropriated state agency, so the shutdown will not affect the board directly, although it will affect our ability to provide services to the extent that our partner agencies are affected by the shutdown. We will keep you posted. We'll send out a blast to all the board members in the event that there's news. But if there's news on a budget, you'll be hearing it on the TV and the radio and the newspapers and everything anyway. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Have a member of the audience like to speak?
I'm sorry, I didn't know how to hit the button here.
Oh.
Jim Fossas, Retired Firefighters of Washington. Are we going to adjourn? Are we going to have a full meeting today, or what's on your schedule, Steve?
No, as soon as the meeting is adjourned, then my understanding was there'd be the meeting with some of the Left One guys and the state council. But that's separate and apart from the Left Two board meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chair, one other question is, who's on the phone? I was outside. I didn't know how many board members phoned in.
There are two members currently on the phone, Paul Golnick and Mark Johnston. So
Okay.
we don't have a quorum.
Thank you.
All right, with that, with no further business and not a quorum, we'll adjourn the meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.